And according to an article which came in the Newsweek magazine on 16th of April 1979, it says that in the span of 150 years, from 1800 to 1850, more than 60,000 books have been written against Islam. And if we calculate, if we divide the number of days and number of books written, more than one book was written against Islam every day. And after 9/11, that is 11th of September 2001, this has reached epidemic level. Every day, several books are written against Islam. If you want to get famous, if you write a book against Islam, the chances it will become a bestseller is high. And we notice that the international media, they use several strategies to spread these misconceptions about Islam. Number one is, they pick up the black sheep of the community and they portray as though they are exemplary Muslims. There are black sheep in every community. What the media does, they pick up the black sheep amongst the Muslims. They are not actually practicing Muslims. They are namesake Muslims. They pick them up and they portray as though they are exemplary Muslims. If you want to know how good is the car, and if you put behind the steering wheel a person who does not know how to drive the car, and if he has an accident, if he bangs the car, who will you blame? Will you blame the car or the driver? Who will you blame? The car or the driver? But naturally the driver. If you want to know how good the car is, you have to analyze the specification. What is the fuel consumption of the car? What is the speed? What is the gear ratio? What are the safety measures? After analyzing these, then can you judge how good the car is. And if you want to really test drive the car, put behind the steering wheel a person who is an expert driver. And if you want to judge Islam, how good Islam is, and you really want to analyze an exemplary Muslim, the best example, it is our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Look at his seerah, analyze the history of the Prophet, and undoubtedly, you'll have to agree that this religion and the follower of this religion, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was the major benefactor for the spreading of peace. Second strategy used is, many a times they give quotations of the Quran and the religious scriptures of Islam out of context. And we find that many critics, if you read many of the books against Islam, if you go on the internet, many sites against Islam, and they give references from the Quran as well as the quotation. And one quotation which is very often used by the critics is of Surah Tawbah, chapter number 9, verse number 5. And this was also used by Arun Shourie, one of the staunchest critics of Islam in this country, India. His name is Arun Shourie. And he writes in his book, The World of Fatwa, and he gives the reference that Quran says in Surah Tawbah, chapter 9, verse number 5, and it tells the Muslims that wherever you find a kafir, into brackets he's indicating Hindus. He's saying that the Quran says in Surah Tawbah, chapter 9, verse number 5, that wherever you find the kafir, you have to kill them. And if you read the Quran, if you open the Quran, and if you read the translation, what he's saying is correct. Surah Tawbah, chapter number 9, verse number 5 does say that wherever you find the kafir, you kill them. But it is quoted out of context. For context, you have to start from verse number 1 of Surah Tawbah, chapter 9. And when you read the context and know the background why was this verse revealed? We come to know that there was a peace treaty between the Muslims and the mushriks of Makkah. And this peace treaty was unilaterally broken by the mushriks of Makkah. So when this peace treaty was unilaterally broken by the mushriks of Makkah, Almighty God Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, He says in Surah Tawbah chapter 9 verse number 5, that He is giving 4 months time. Otherwise, there is a declaration of war. As mentioned in Surah Tawbah chapter 9 verse number 5, that after the 4 forbidden months, it tells the Muslims that you fight and you kill the pagans, that means your enemies, wherever you find them, and wait for them, seize them, and wait for them in every stratagem of war. So in context we come to know this verse was revealed in the battlefield. That in the battlefield, when the peace treaty is broken and when the enemies come to fight you, don't get scared, fight back and kill them where you find them. But natural, any army general in the battlefield, to boost up the morale of the soldier, he will say fight them. Suppose there's a war going on between US and Vietnam, and if the army general of USA, if he says that wherever you find the Vietnamese, you kill them, but naturally it's in context. But if I quote out of context and say that today the Army General of America says that wherever you find a Vietnamese today, you kill them, I will make him sound like a butcher. But natural, to boost up the morale, Almighty God will not say that, okay, run away. To boost up the morale, He has to say that don't get scared, fight. And it's a fight between truth and falsehood. And such examples you'll find in the Bible. If you see in the Gospel of Matthew, you will find in the Hindu scriptures, in Bhagavad Gita, full Bhagavad Gita speaks about that. That Lord Krishna, He is giving advice to Arjun. Arjun in the battlefield. He says in Bhagavad Gita chapter number 1, verse number 46, 47, 48, in the battlefield, he puts his weapons and says, I would prefer being killed unarmed than to fight my relatives. So Shri Krishna says, just a few verses later, in Bhagavad Gita chapter number 2, verse number 2 and 3, that how, oh Arjun, how can you be so impotent? It is the duty of the Kshatriya, it is the duty of the warrior to fight. And only if you fight, will you go to the heavenly planet, to the paradise. And it goes on and on. You can see my cassette on terrorism and jihad, where I've spoken in detail. But when the Quran speaks about this, non-Muslims have a problem. Imagine if I say that Bhagavad Gita is saying, kill your relatives. It will be devilish. And Bhagavad Gita does say that. If I say Bhagavad Gita says, kill your relatives, it will be devilish. In context it says that when you have to fight against untruth, if you have to fight against oppression, stand for truth, even if it be against your relatives. And as far as this message of Bhagavad Gita is concerned, we are for it. Quran says the same.